Welcome aboard. Welcome to today's tour. Today we're in Healy, Alaska. We are going to tour the Stampede Trail. You may have heard of it. It gained some notoriety from a 1996 book and a 2007 movie titled Into the Wild. It's the story of Christopher McCandless. He went into the Alaskan wilderness to live off the land, and a bit of a spoiler, he didn't make it back. Today we'll talk about his story, we'll do some flying over the Stampede Trail, and we'll see some of the area where the story actually played out. I'm going to get the cockpit set up, get this plane started, get us in the air, and then I will put you in the hands of our trusty tour guide, who surprisingly sounds a lot just like me. Today's tour has us in Healy, Alaska. We are at the Healy River Airport, airport code PAHV for those that are interested, just a few miles south of what's known as the Stampede Trail. The Stampede Trail is the backdrop to the story of Christopher McCandless, the subject of the 2007 movie Into the Wild. Let's send up the drone, take a look around the airport. We should be able to see to the north the start of the trail indicated by a marker and the city of Healy off to the left. As we depart, straight ahead will be the entrance to the trail, which is just off of Alaska Route 3, about 2 miles north of Healy Center. Again, we will bank to the left and then follow the general path of the Stampede Trail, and if things go as planned, we will end up at the far end where there's supposed to be, hopefully will be, a small airstrip where we can land.
Papa Alpha Hotel Victor Traffic Dude 001 is taxiing to runway 33.
If this is your first time here, welcome. What we do is find interesting places with interesting stories, and we fly to them in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. Today we are back in the Cessna Grand Caravan 208B. If anyone has an idea on an interesting place to fly, please leave it in a comment below. The Stampede Trail itself, it's a road or a trail, and it's located here in Denali Borough in the state of Alaska. And it's paved for the first 8 miles, so starting here on the eastern end, about 8 miles or 13 kilometers are still paved. But the rest of the route is basically an unpaved, very primitive, remote, and what's considered very dangerous trail.
Papa Alpha Hotel Victor Traffic Dude 001 taking off runway 33 north departure.
The trail follows what was originally a road, but over many years has deteriorated greatly. And it runs from here in Healy to the west to an abandoned mine that's located near Stampede Creek. Healy and this trail, it's located on the northern boundary of the Denali National Park, which encompasses 6 million acres of Alaska's interior wilderness. It is also the location of the 20,310-foot high mountain peak Denali. And Denali is North America's tallest peak. As I mentioned, the trail's east end is here in Healy. The actual access to it is about 2 miles north of the center of Healy along Alaska Route 3. The Stampede Trail became the focus of attention after the 1992 death of Christopher McCandless, who was a 22-year-old that went out into the Alaskan wilderness to live off the land, and whose remains were found in an abandoned bus about 28 miles down the trail. And that's today's tour along the trail. We will find the location where that bus was located, and then end at the western end of the most remote end of the Stampede Trail. There will be some great scenery today as well. We will be taking in some great Alaskan wilderness. Again, we're just north of the Denali National Park. The Stampede Trail became the focus of attention after the 1992 death of Christopher McCandless. He was the 22-year-old whose remains were found in an abandoned bus deep inside the wilderness about 28 miles down this trail. Today's tour will follow the general path of this trail. We will fly over the location where that bus was located, and the far end of the trail should be where we find the small airstrip, which will be our final destination today. The bus that played a prominent part of the story, as well as Christopher's story in general, was first brought to the public's attention by an article in Outside magazine. And then there was a subsequent book in 1996, and of course the film in 2007, Into the Wild. The trail originally got its start as a mining trail, so in the 1900s, prospectors were drawn to the area by the discovery of gold. And then in the 1930s, there was a miner, Earl Pilgrim, and he used that trail to access his mine, which was at the far end by Stampede Creek. In 1960, Utan Construction was granted a contract from the state of Alaska to upgrade the trail as part of Alaska's Pioneer Road program, building a road for trucks to haul ore from the mine year-round to the railroad at Lignet, which is near the present-day town of Healy. Although construction was discontinued in 1961, and after only 47.5 miles, about 76 kilometers of the road were built. In addition to not completing the road, none of the bridges were ever constructed that would have had to go over several of the rivers. And they maintained what road they did build for only a short time. In 1963, all the maintenance was halted and the whole route became pretty much impassable over time, especially for normal vehicles and especially due to the seasonal flooding. Looks like we're about 3 minutes out from the location where bus 142 was located. We'll be flying directly over the area. In its current state, the trail is primarily only used by hikers and hunters on foot. Of course, some might use dog sleds, snowmobiles, and ATVs. And the main obstacle on the trail is obviously the rivers, especially the Teklanika River, which during the summer is very impassable because it swells due to all of the snow melt. Along the trail, there are various shelters or makeshift shelters, and one of these is what is known as Bus 142. So it's a repurposed transit bus. Bus 142 is a former Fairbanks City Transit System bus. 142, it's a 1946 International Harvester K5, and it was abandoned in a clearing along the trail near the Denali National Park. It was originally one of 3 buses used by the Utan Construction Company to provide accommodation to the construction crews that were there from Fairbanks working on that road project in the 1960s. Bus 142 gained its notoriety in January of 1993 when Outside Magazine published its article, Death of an Innocent, describing the death of Christopher McCandless. The article went on to describe Christopher as an American hitchhiker who lived in the bus during the summer of 1992 while attempting to survive off of the Alaskan wilderness, only to die of starvation 3.5 months later. The bus also went on to be known as the Magic Bus, based on Christopher using that term in his writings. After the 2007 movie Into the Wild, the bus became a pilgrimage site, so hikers and visitors would try to make their way to the site where Christopher had perished. We're almost to the site, or that clearing, at the fork of this river ahead where the bus was actually located. The 2007 film Into the Wild was the movie version of Jon Krakauer's 1996 book about McCandless, Into the Wild, and it was written and directed by Sean Penn. Christopher Johnson McCandless, he was born in California, and he was the son of Billy and Walt McCandless. Christopher graduated from Emory University in May of 1990 with a bachelor's degree in the double majors of history and anthropology. Christopher did really well in school, and he was poised to have a very successful career. But after graduating in the summer of 1990, he changed his outlook on life. He donated all of his college savings of $24,000 to the nonprofit Oxfam, and he adopted a nomadic lifestyle. In the months that followed, Christopher traveled to various parts of the country, and he also started going by the pseudonym Alexander Supertramp. So friends explained that he saw himself as some kind of super tramp. He was living, I guess, what you would call a vagabond lifestyle. Christopher was also an avid outdoorsman, so in addition to just the traveling he did around the country, he went on multiple lengthy hikes into the wilderness. By the end of 1990, McCandless had driven his Datsun through California, Arizona, and South Dakota. At some point, he got caught in a flash flood, and it disabled his car. So they believe that he just took the license plates off the car, took his personal belongings, or at least what he could carry, and then headed out and was now conducting his traveling on foot. In April of 1992, McCandless hitchhiked from South Dakota to Fairbanks, Alaska. He was last seen at the head of the Stampede Trail, where our tour started today, on April 28th by a local electrician named Jim Gallion. He was the person who had given McCandless a ride all the way from Fairbanks to this point, which is the start of the trail in the town of Healy. He would also go on to say later that he was seriously concerned about the safety of McCandless. Christopher had introduced himself to him as Alex, hence the pseudonym Alex Supertramp. He said he noticed that he had a very light pack, he had minimal equipment, he had meager rations, and an obvious lack of experience. Gillian said that he had, doubts that Alex would have the ability to survive out in the harsh Alaskan wilderness. What is believed to have taken place on the trail below us is that Christopher headed out on that snow-covered trail, believing that he was going to make it all the way west to the Bering Sea, but by the time he came upon that abandoned bus, that bus 142, he decided to set up camp there. While camping at the bus, McCandless attempted to make multiple treks west on the trail to see how far he could go and still be able to survive off of the land, which was not easy since he didn't bring much with him. He was said to have left with only 10 pounds of rice, a Remington semi-automatic rifle with 400 rounds of ammunition, a few books, some personal effects, and only a few camping pieces of camping equipment. So the items that Christopher had left behind at the bus included self-portraits, photographs he had taken of himself, as well as journal entries on what had taken place while he was staying at the bus. The entries in the journal he left behind described how he was actually surviving off of the land, or attempting to survive off of the land. It said that he foraged for edible plants and hunted game. He talked about hunting porcupines and squirrels and birds. And actually on June 9th, he stalked and shot a moose. But since he had no way to store the meat or cure the meat spoiled. His journal documented 113 days and described how in July, after living in the bus for a little over 2 months, he decided to head back to civilization, and he headed back east on the trail. But unfortunately, he found that the trail was blocked and impassable at the Teklanika River. The waters had risen because of the summer runoff, and there was absolutely no way he was going to be able to wade across the river back to the east. Once he realized that getting back to civilization wasn't an option, he realized that he might be in trouble. One of the things he did at this point is when he was out foraging during the day, he posted an SOS note on the bus. The SOS note said, "Attention, possible visitors. SOS, I need your help. I am injured, near death, and too weak to hike out. I am all alone, and this is no joke. In the name of God, please remain to save me. I am out collecting berries close by and shall return this evening. Thank you, Chris McCandless." The last day that his journal actually had a written entry was on day 107, and it simply read, "Beautiful blue berries." The following days, 108 through 112, contained no words, and they were only marked with slashes. And then day 113, there was no entry at all. So the exact time and date of his death is not really known, but near the time of his death, McCandless took a picture of himself waving while holding a written note which read, "I have had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye and may God bless all." On September 6th, a group of hunters who were looking for shelter for the night came up to the bus where McCandless had been staying and discovered his body in the bus in a sleeping bag. I believe it was estimated that he had been dead approximately a couple weeks before the hunters had found his remains in the bus. Once Christopher's story was told through the book and the 2007 film Into the Wild, of course, many people tried to hike to the location where the bus was. It's a dangerous trail, so this increase in hikers meant there was an increase in required rescues and even an increase in deaths of people hiking the trail to get to this location. In 2020, because of these safety concerns, the bus was actually removed. Arrangements were made. The military was involved in using a Chinook helicopter. They actually lifted bus 142 from its location in that clearing along the trail and removed it. The bus was transported to the University of Alaska, so the plan is for it to be preserved and displayed there as part of their Museum of the North. As we get to the end of the trail today, we are looking for a small airstrip. It's known as the Stampede airstrip, and that's where we'll be setting this aircraft down today. Hope you enjoyed today's flight, today's tour. A little bit of a sad story, but interesting. Stampede Trail, Bus 142, Christopher McCandless, the 22-year-old who went into the wild.
Over the years, many tourists tried to reach the bus where Christopher McCandless spent 114 days before dying of starvation in 1992. Now, many of those tourists needed to be rescued, and some even died. Yesterday, the Alaska National Guard removed the bus using a heavy lift helicopter. The bus is being stored at a secure site, but discussions are underway for it to possibly go on display to the public. Tony, there were 15 bus-related search and rescue operations between 2009 and 2017, and last year, a young woman died trying to reach it.
Welcome to the ground Stampede Airfield. Pretty much the end of the Stampede Trail. Deep in the Alaskan wilderness. We are definitely into the wild now. So let's take a look around. Let's shut the plane down. I hope to see you on one of our next tours.